Hey, what's going on? Alright, today for Behind the Scenes, we're going to talk about Open Broadcaster Software, or OBS, which is the software that I and most streamers use to get our video onto Twitch and YouTube and other streaming platforms. We use it because it's free, which is really cool. It's also pretty well supported, and it's pretty easy to use, I would say. If you are a streamer yourself, or you've messed around with OBS in the past, this isn't going to be a lot of crazy, exciting stuff. It's probably stuff you've seen before. But if you're new to streaming or you haven't streamed before, I think this will be really interesting to see what actually goes into setting up a scene and getting everything out there. So what I'm doing here, it's kind of funny actually. It's kind of difficult to capture OBS. I can't use the streaming software to capture itself, otherwise we get this effect here. I'll show you. You get this infinite mirror effect, right? We're extending forever. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a different version of OBS called OBS Studio. That's the most recent one, to capture my old scenes in OBS Classic. I've already started work on converting over to OBS Studio. I think that's sort of the recommendation, is to get with the most recent software. They're working on making it as feature complete as the original version of OBS, OBS Classic. It's not quite there yet, and there's a couple features that are still missing that I use, so I'm holding off on finishing my conversion. But we can at least use OBS Studio today to record what OBS looks like when we're actually streaming. You'll notice that my webcam's not going to display in the OBS preview window on screen because it's already in the very top right corner, and my machine won't let multiple applications use the same video source. So let's take a look here. If you look, a lot of things going on the screen, right? You got your preview window. This is what's going to stream. I usually have one of my 3 monitors devoted to having my OBS preview window open, so I can notice if something's going wrong, if video's not displaying, or it's choppy or something to that effect. So this is exactly what you guys are seeing on Twitch, maybe about 8 seconds sooner. I can set my volume. I can adjust. You're not going to hear it adjust because I'm doing this in a preview window, but I can adjust my mic volume. I can adjust my desktop audio volume. And what's important to note is that the audio that you get in OBS is your desktop audio. It's all of it. It's not just a game. It's system sounds, Facebook notifications. So as a streamer, I have to be pretty careful to turn all that stuff off before I go live, lest people start spinning their heads like, wait, did somebody message me on Facebook? OBS Studio has actually improved a little bit in that respect. You can have a little bit more control over the volume for some devices, so I can make the volume of my capture card different than the volume of my my desktop, which is technically still possible in Classic, but it's kind of a pain to execute and to change on the fly. So maybe once we finish our Studio conversion, I would guess later in 2016, once it finishes having the features that we need, I might show you just another short video of differences in Studio. Other things that I'm always looking at when I'm looking at my OBS preview window, down here in the bottom right, this is the most important green square of my life. That square, as long as it's green, is showing the bit rate to which I'm streaming to Twitch. I usually stream at about 2,000 kilobytes per second. That's the so-called golden ratio of quality to accessibility for people. If you go much higher than 2,000 kbps, you're going to make it hard for people in rural areas and people with bad internet connections to watch your stream without it buffering. And that's one of the advantages that a partnered streamer has, is that they can stream at a higher bit rate because people can turn the quality settings down. And while we still don't have guaranteed quality options, it's not worth trying to push that number too high. As long as that number is green, I'm sending what I want to send, at least 2,000 kbps to Twitch. If it turns yellow, that means I'm starting to drop frames, which is this other value down here to the left. Dropped frames, as I understand it, you guys continue to get audio uninterrupted, but as it sounds, some of the video frames will start dropping, they'll start to look choppy. When that happens, that's entirely a connection thing. Like, the video is still saving locally on my computer. If you go and watch on YouTube later, the VOD, you're not going to see any frames missing, but they will be when you're watching it live on Twitch, and the Twitch VOD, it's failing to get there in time. There's an FPS counter. This will tank sometimes if my computer's under heavy load. Most of the time when I see my FPS tank will be if I go to open Chrome on my main computer. It's one of the main reasons that I keep a laptop separate from my streaming tower, and I'll show that off when we do hardware behind the scenes. That way I can dork around with Chrome and do anything I need to do on the internet on my laptop without it interfering with the CPU load on my streaming tower in any way, or cause things to drop. So yeah, magic green square. When I type in chat 0 kbps, because I know that the stream's about to go offline, it's because I saw that green square turn red, and I saw the number drop to 0, which is very, very bad. Other stuff that's going on the screen here, I mean, obviously your attention's drawn to the preview window, so I'll kind of run through what's going on in here. What OBS lets you do, essentially, is layer a bunch of different elements on the screen and then decide whether or not you want them to display. So I could start turning all of these off by just unchecking all of these boxes. And you'll start to notice the BRB goes away, the frame goes away, right? And as I remove these things, I can just as easily add them back on. Each one of these items, objects, is either an image, so like a PNG file or a JPEG, a GIF, a video source like the webcam or my capture card also counts as a video source, a captured window, which is technically what the chat is over here on the right. That's capturing an application I have called Chatty. I'm going to drag it in from a different monitor so you can see it. When I do window capture, let's see if I can show you what that looks like. It does exactly what it sounds like. I'm telling it to... Oh, I guess I can't do it while I'm streaming it. Oh, that's too bad. I'm telling it to get just a specific part of this window, right? I'm saying I don't want this stuff at the top that says main view channels SRL. I don't need to have the list of viewers over on the right. I just need to know the part of chat, I subscribe to the webcam, the part of chat that can fit into the window. So window capture is a pretty powerful tool. I also use that for getting things like the heart rate monitor, which I can show you real quick. I'm not going to actually plug it in, but this is what my heart rate monitor software looks like, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. It like graphs out a history of your heart rate, but all that I really care about is the BPM, so I can capture that. And notice now it's showing up. Usually I'll have a pretty background there. So window capture, the rule that you can remember is that if you can get something to appear on your monitor in any way, you can capture it in OBS using window capture if you have to. It's not a very efficient way of capturing, though. It uses a lot of resources. If you can hook directly into the video feed, that's often better, which is something called game capture. And I'll see if I can boot a game really fast to show that off. I don't know if it's going to be viable. Hold on. I don't think I'll be able to show you the capture card because it's competing for resources right now with the software I'm using to record this video. Let me see if I can boot up Bioshock real quick. Bioshock. Hopefully it doesn't go all full screen and piss off my computer, right? Hey, look at that. All right. Well, that's... You're seeing the actual window Bioshock there, right? But if we look, there's Bioshock. And something that I often forget to do, because I leave most of my games on here in case I come back and play them again. Whenever I add a new game, I have to set it up manually. So usually I'll uncheck them. Occasionally if I'm playing a game and you notice that you hear audio but you don't see video, it's because I forgot to check this little box here. But I'll show you what I have to do to add a game on the fly. This is part of the pre-stream stuff I have to do, especially on sub-block days. I have to download and install the game, obviously, and then I have to add it into OBS to make sure that it's visible and that it works okay. Sometimes you can have capture issues with different games. So I'll leave this Bioshock here, but I'm going to add a second one just so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to add game capture, Bioshock. I guess I should give it a different name. Pretend like it's Bioshock 2. You get some details here. If you're playing a game where you're actually using the mouse, you might want to capture the mouse cursor. I've been playing with the controller, so I tend to uncheck that. Right, so there's Bioshock, and I'm actually going to switch it to stretch to screen so I can resize it better. I don't want to take up my whole screen, obviously. I need to reserve space for the chat. So what I have to do is line it up here with my frame. Nice little red guidelines. Drag it so it just fits, and you notice it's kind of ugly because there's black overlapping the frame part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it in order, If you're familiar with Photoshop, GIMP, Paint.net, any kind of image editing software, you're familiar with layers. This works pretty much the same way. Whatever's at the top of the list is at the top of the video. So let me click off of this. You can better see what I just did. I'm going to turn this off here. Now notice when I have it above the frame, it's clipping over top of it. And when I put it below the frame, it's nicely contained within. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Turn it off, remove it, and so on. Part of the reason I have these extra black bars all around the display is there are certain games that don't quite fit in the 720p screen size. So rather than just have blue and purple in the background, I try to frame it with black there so it looks a little bit nicer. I used to have separate scenes for every possible aspect ratio, so this nice widescreen Final Fantasy VI frame you see used to have a different version for like Super Nintendo games and GBA games, but it got really unwieldy. It meant that I had to change every single scene every time I wanted to play a game on a different system, and I wasn't really gaining all that much additional screen real estate, so I figured it'd be better to just be consistent and use this style and fit the game into this window. And we're not really losing a lot of extra game video when we do it that way. Yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's other thing else that's really crazy about OBS. It's a lot more straightforward than you might think it is. It's pretty easy to pick up. You just kind of throw images in there. If you've never streamed before, the best thing you can do, pretty much just make a scene, right? We're just going to make one from scratch, and then add your webcam, which I won't be able to do because I'm capturing up there in the top right corner. But put your webcam in here, drop it somewhere. I can put in an image as a placeholder. We'll pretend like it's my webcam. Let's pretend like this is the webcam, right? So this is what you start with. This is, if you go back and you watch my very first stream of Earthbound, this is what it looked like. It was just a black background with my webcam over in the corner, stretched all ugly to take up a bunch of space. And then I would do add, and I would game capture, whatever game I'm playing, and just pick it up and drag it somewhere so you could see it. And I think that's what I recommend if you're looking into getting into streaming. Like, don't look at this and think I need to do that before I go live. You're never going to do anything if that's how you approach it. I think you're a lot better off starting with this and then iterating on it over time. Just keep adding new elements, removing elements, tweaking your UI until you think it looks nice. Ask for feedback. Other cool stuff I can do. The donation goal, for example, is pulling from something called the CLR browser. I'll see if I can pull that up real quick without pissing off my machine. Hold on. Hey, there's the voting spreadsheet upload. CLR browser essentially lets you pull a video source or a web page source directly without having to have like a Chrome window open all the time. So I'll show you what this preview window looks like. Normally, if I wanted to capture this green preview window, I'd have to keep up this Chrome tab all the time and have a window capture set up. But CLL browser makes it so that it's always looking for that. And since it's excluding that green background, when I click on Twitch alerts, for example, you don't see anything there, right? Now, if I go back, make some space here. I go back into Twitch alerts and fire a test follow alert, and I'll have to click back really fast here. Right? That's what's getting displayed. That's essentially what's happening. I have this image set up in Twitch alerts that's going to display, and the CLR browser shows it. It's over top of everything else I have in my UI at the time, and then it fades out. The donation goal is the same thing. It's just something that's on a website. It's on this Twitch alerts center, and you can see it there. Text is pretty cool. You've got a lot of control over size. If you wanted to scroll like we have with the Patreon shout out, you'll notice a lot of streamers have, it almost looks like a CNN scrolling ticker all the time with recent news. I try to keep that as limited as possible. The big thing with my overlay, and if you've taken some of my surveys in the past or heard me talk about it on stream, is that it's really important to me that I have some way of displaying the Twitch chat on screen in a log format. So that when people watch a video in the future on YouTube, they know who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about. So that automatically gives up a certain portion of the screen real estate. And you could argue, well, there are some streamers that they'll display the chat on screen, but they'll have it superimposed over the game somewhere. And my big goal is to not obscure the gameplay in any way. Anything that's overlay or UI related should be separate from the gameplay, which means that you give up part of the screen real estate. The gameplay doesn't get to take up the whole screen. It's a little bit smaller, not as big as what you'd see at a full screen at home. But I think that it's a reasonable solution, and the fact that we have the chat opens up the top and the bottom for some information for new people walking in, for the webcam to not obscure the game, and to not have to change it with every game we switch to. As a variety streamer, it gets really difficult to change your overlay if you're playing 6 or 7 games a week, to be specific to each one of them. There's a lot of settings options in OBS. I'll run through them real quick just because it's useful to know what you're getting into if you're looking to get into streaming. Skip the ones that aren't interesting. This is what I was talking about setting video encoding to 2000 kbps. This is something that has to be set before you go live, so unfortunately I can't just change this or the video encoding while the stream is running. If we go live, for example, and we get quality options, which is really exciting, it means that I could stream at a higher bit rate and a higher frame rate. I can't just pop in here and switch it. It doesn't work that way. I have to turn the stream off, turn it back on with the updated values. And then we've had in the past where I'll have the quality options and go, hey, exciting, cool, I'll turn up the quality, turn the stream off, set everything back up, go back live, and now the quality options are gone. So I have to go offline again, turn them back down, and then we go online again. The quality options are back, and it's a mess. That's why I don't fish for them very much anymore, because I can't just change it on the fly. Broadcast settings, when you stream, just an idea of how it works. When you set up a Twitch account, if you go to your dashboard, and you should have a dashboard right now, even if you're not actively streaming, if you have a Twitch account, it's just twitch.tv/your username/dashboard. You can find a stream key there, and it's a magic value that you paste into here, and it's fortunately blacked out so nobody can look at this YouTube video and hack my Twitch channel. But the stream key is pretty cool. You can kind of pass it around if you want somebody else to stream to your channel on your behalf. I've done that before with Dungeons & Dragons. I was the dungeon master, and I didn't want people on Twitch to see my view of the game. I wanted stuff to be a surprise. So I had one of my players, Haypax. I gave him my stream key, and he streamed on my behalf to the channel, even though everyone could still hear my voice and everything through Google Hangouts. I can set where I save local recording, and I'm a big fan of saving local recordings. I have like 3 ways to recover my VOD if something bad happens. So I save a local copy on my C drive, and I move that around. Like a big chunk of my drive space here, I'll show you there in the bottom right, is I've got this Twitch drive and the Z drive, and those are both VODs, pretty much. Like if I go into this guy here, it's going to take forever to load, so I'm just going to skip it. But there's a ton of videos in there. I have every VOD since I picked up this drive a while ago. You can even see this VOD right now is recording as I'm speaking. In addition to that, you can set VOD archiving on Twitch, which you can potentially export to YouTube, and then YouTube saves a copy if you're live streaming to them like I do. You'll notice that here I don't have Twitch as my streaming service. I have Restream, which is the service I use to stream to both Twitch and YouTube at the same time. It's free, has no quality degradation, and if there's any change in delay, it's like an additional second. It's a thing that I've been using for over a year now, and I'm always asking myself, what's the catch with Restream? How can this possibly be free and not cost me additional resources? I still don't know the answer to that. I've asked them before, and they've been like, it's viewer supported. Okay, well, it seems like a really cool service for it to be viewer supported. Continue doing that until we get partnered, probably. I can set resolution. You'll notice that my machine is at 1920 by 1080, but I've downscaled the resolution to 720p and 30 frames per second. That is the so-called golden ratio. You'll see this come up a lot on the Twitch subreddit. You want to stream 720p, 30 frames per second, 2000 kbps. Makes the quality look pretty decent. You won't see a lot of compression artifacts depending on what kind of game you're playing. Games like Hearthstone that have very little movement will look much better, for example, than a first-person shooter where whenever you turn the camera, all the pixels on the screen are having to change. I might throw a link. I'm going to do a thing where I point, Yeah, there's going to be a link there in the video. It's going to be magical. Throw a link to this cool video by one of the guys at Numberphile about how video compression works that I thought was really, really helpful. Give you an intuition for why, like when you're watching a stream that has confetti or snow in it, why the quality just tanks immediately. That will help you kind of get an intuition for this system. And then partnered streamers can upgrade this so that they're actually streaming at 1080p, 60 frames per second, and just rely on their viewers to downgrade the quality option if they're getting buffering and problems like that. Audio we're going to get into in a different stream. My audio setup's actually kind of complicated. I don't just have a mic plugged in. I've got some other software running behind the scenes that makes it work, which is why it's plugged into this thing called a virtual audio cable. I do have a mic boost running, so that increases the gain on my microphone, so it's louder than the desktop. I'm always cognizant of that. I want to be audible over the game, but I don't want to be blaring in your ear. And I think I like the video game BGM so much and sound effects so much that I don't want those to be inaudible. So trying to achieve that balance requires a lot of testing, and testing's not easy to do. I'm not getting live feedback if I'm testing the audio on a game. What I essentially have to do is I have to record about 10 seconds of me playing it and talking over it, and then play back that recording myself and do that until I get it right. I've actually talked with Galactic Kodiak, another streamer, before about us taking turns doing audio checks for each other, like streaming to our bots channel or something where we don't have to worry about people walking in on it, and just doing a live sound check, because being able to adjust dynamically, turn it up a little bit, turn it down a little bit, would probably save about 20 minutes of preparation for each game that we play. So thanks for your patience with me if we load a game and it's way too loud or I'm way too quiet or whatever. It's usually because the preparation is just kind of hard to get exactly right. Got some hotkeys that you can use. I don't really use those. Don't really need to worry about any of this stuff. It's probably about the end of it. A lot of people use noise gates, and I do too, but I don't use the one that's native to OBS. This is a tool that tries to listen in your microphone to stop any audio from coming through if it's below a certain threshold, to try to cut out like the sound of your air conditioning. We'll talk about that more when I get into my audio video, but the one in OBS is pretty reasonable if you don't have any aftermarket audio software to work with, like Audition or something similar. It's kind of neat though to be able to pop between scenes. Like when you see me switch to my loading screen here, I'm just kind of clicking here. This is a scene is, the way you can think about it is this is a collection of sources. Sources are images, video capture devices like webcams, capture cards, and scene is a folder of sources. So I have like a setup for my 3DS. Actually, I should show this. The 3DS is something that's really kind of tricky to capture well. It's two screens from your perspective when you're playing it at home on your device. If you want to stream it on Twitch, you have to fit two screens that have different aspect ratios onto one channel window. You can't send two different video streams out. So you automatically are sacrificing a ton of screen real estate if you're going to do that. This is as big as I can possibly make the top and bottom screens. And I have in the wings a backup version of this that has the bottom screen as the large one and the top screen as the small one, which again totally mucks with the aspect ratio that you use. So since you end up having all that dead space, you kind of want to fill it. And I'm constantly questioning, like, I'm still not the biggest fan of all the shit that's on the screen right here. Like, I'd like to tone this down a little bit, not quite so much text. There's some other streamers that will do custom backgrounds based on the game that they're playing and things like that, but finding a way to make a 3DS game look good is tough. The way the 3DS capture works is kind of interesting. We'll wrap up with this tangent and then we'll end the video. I have this cool software called, here it is, 3DS Viewer. And this came with my capture card from Katsukitty, the company in Japan. When I take my 3DS over here, this guy, it's plugged in via USB cable that they had to drill into the back of it. I get the game. Look at that. Hopefully it's not so loud that you can't hear me anymore. you'll see two things there. You'll see the actual software there on the left. That's the window that I'm looking at. That's why people will come in sometimes when I'm playing 3DS and be like, how are you looking at the camera and playing this game? Well, it's because it's on my monitor, right? I can hold the 3DS as though it were a controller that's just in my hands on my lap, and I can look at the screen and see the video right there. And then what I'm doing to get the game into OBS for you guys to see it, let me shrink it a little bit here so you can see it. I'm just doing window capture, like I mentioned earlier. I can't do game capture, but I'll do window capture, and I'll say, you know, for the top screen, I just want this half up here, and for the bottom screen, I just want this little square. I don't want all the black on the sides. So it's pretty cool. See, I could go. I would talk to you more about my actual capture card. It's a Elgato, but I don't think it will load, unfortunately. Try turning on my PS4 real quick. The reason it won't load is because it's technically preloaded into my into OBS Studio, which is what I'm using to record this video right now. So you'd get that crazy Hall of Mirrors effect if I tried to turn it on. Yeah, it doesn't think it's going to come on. That's okay. Well, anyway, with that one moment, please, we'll switch to the game video if it's working. And that's a PCIe card that I have installed in my tower. There's some separate software for that you can technically stream from, but I don't think a lot of people use that for streaming directly. They instead just add it as a video source inside of OBS. Right now in OBS Classic, if I want to dick around with something, like if I want to change the sound, see if I can show you what happens. I have to go in here and change the device audio, and doing that will often change the aspect ratio of the screen. So I have to resize it, so it's something that I have to think about. So, cool. I think that's pretty much all I got to say about OBS for today. If you have questions, let me know. For this one, my approach is pretty much just click through OBS for 25 minutes and talk about what comes up at the top of my head. I might do a second version with a little bit more structure when we get OBS Studio set up once it gets fully featured at the end of the year. Next up, I think I'm going to do a review of our hardware. I think that kind of ties into OBS. We'll walk through everything at the desk, the tower itself, my microphone, things like that. So keep an eye out for that. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.